I didn't get a chance to go to CES this year, and honestly, I'm actually kind of sad about it now, because there's been a lot of really cool gaming-related announcements, a couple specific ones, including Sony officially unveiled the PS5 logo. In all seriousness though, there are some really cool announcements that have been coming out, and I think the first one we have to talk about right away is Dell's very obvious not Switch clone Concept UFO. Now, as the name Concept implies, it's just that, a concept. This is not a real thing yet. And if you guys want to see this be a real thing, make sure to drop a like down below as well as subscribe, because if it comes out, I will definitely want to cover this thing and check it out. Effectively, what this is just, well, the same basic idea as a Switch, where you have a main tablet that is the main body of the system, and controllers that slot in on the sides. You can take those off and use them wirelessly, and it even has a little connector to put them together. But instead of being this kind of proprietary thing where it's owned by a company, say Nintendo, it really is just a portable handheld PC. By the way, I love the fact that obviously they can't openly acknowledge that yes, we are making our own version of a Nintendo Switch, but it is so heavily clearly that, not just in the design of it, but the mock-up UI that it's currently using is basically the same thing as the Switch's light mode, where it's just that white background with blue outlines. Yeah, it's a little fancier looking, but come on. Of course, with this being a portable PC and not necessarily a more kind of generic game console, part of the goal of this is the idea that bigger is better. And this is a much beefier looking system than what the Switch is in a lot of different ways, including the fact that it has a 10-inch screen compared to the 6.2-inch screen of a Switch, so that is massive. And supposedly the targeted resolution that they want for it is 1200p, which is, you know, a little better than 720. Part of this trade-off is that it does look absolutely massive, and if I'm being really honest here, I'm not a huge fan of the controller designs. It's just this weird kind of, there's flat edges, but they're kind of rounded out at the same time. The bezel's a trapezoid. Visually, it's not my favorite looking handheld system out there, but the core concept of what it's trying to do is really intriguing to me. Honestly, one of the things that I think has been best about the Switch being the big success that it is that it's really reinvigorated a lot of interest in making more handheld style devices. You know, for a while, people were kind of writing them off as sort of like, well, we have phones now, we don't need dedicated handhelds, but here we are now in 2020, and we're seeing a handheld PC be something that people are focusing on and really intrigued by the idea of. There aren't a lot of specifics just yet about how this thing actually is going to work out because, again, concept. So they're not really talking any in-depth specs right now. We don't know what actual parts would make it into the final version of it. We don't know a couple kind of important other metrics like battery life and heat because, yeah, all that power sounds really nice, but if it only lasts an hour and a half to 2 hours, which is honestly still not that much worse than a regular Switch, come to think about it. The point is that there's a lot we still don't know about what this final thing potentially could be, but honestly, I'm really excited to see it. Really, the most exciting thing about the system, aside from the idea of being able to play some awesome high-power PC games on the go, is the fact that it could also be something that maybe fills in some of the gaps and some of the lacking functions that people really wish the regular Switch had. I mean, really, when you look at the kind of stuff people talk about when they have their dream list of Switch Pro features, like bigger screen, higher resolution, Bluetooth audio support, this is all the kind of stuff that this could very easily fulfill. Now, obviously, there's the one problem that it won't be able to play Mario Kart or Fire Emblem or whatever, Legend of Zelda, but still, I just love seeing more handhelds like this become a focus on future releases. Now, funny enough, that is not the only vaguely Switch-related product that showed up at CES this year. It's kind of funny how much Nintendo kind of styled things are showing up even though they're not there at all. But Razer unveiled a new mobile controller as well called the Kishi. Now, the Kishi is very similar to a design they've already released called the Jungle Cat, which was their kind of version of Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons, but an important difference is instead of being wireless ones that you have to use a case and slot them onto, this is a more traditional direct connection style where it plugs into the base of your phone and then it has a kind of backing to it that runs along the back of it, extends out, closes on it. Very similar to the GameVice, who is a company that actually sued Nintendo, saying they took the idea from them. And in fact, GameVice is working with Razer on this exact design. What really stands out as something different about this compared to the Jungle Cat is not only is it wired instead of a wireless connection, which hopefully makes it maybe a little more affordable, but it does look like a more actual full-bodied controller, which could be even more comfortable. The Jungle Cats were very much based on the Joy-Con style design, which makes sense, but at the end of the day isn't always the most comfortable way to hold a controller, so I'm really curious how the Kishi is going to feel different. But on top of that, instead of being one that only works for Android, this is actually designed to come in both an Android and iOS style model, whether it plugs in by USB-C or Lightning. That to me is actually the most exciting part, because while I like the Jungle Cats, my main phone that I go to and use is an iPhone. So having something that actually supports that is great. Now I just need to actually get xCloud on there so I can do that full experience. For the time being though, I guess I'll just do PlayStation Remote Play. It's gonna be really funny when this thing finally comes out with Lightning support, and then Apple's gonna reveal their new phone where they just remove the port entirely. It's gonna be great. People are gonna love it. One other thing I want to talk about that's a little different from the other two, it's still kind of Nintendo related, but it's not really the Switch, and that's the new Retron Jr. from Hyperkin. Now, if you're familiar with Hyperkin, they mostly make a lot of retro-themed products. They make a lot of controllers. One of the earlier products they're really known for was the Retron, which is a way to play old-school games for like the NES and the SNES. Well, the Retron Jr. is a way to play Game Boy games on your TV. It's really simple actually, it's just this tiny little cube with a Game Boy slot. It'll support Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance, and just plugs in HDMI out to a TV, giving you a 720p resolution signal, which really, when we're talking about Game Boy games, is a more than high enough resolution. Now, this being a Hyperkin system does mean that it'll make use of software-style emulation, which should make it a little more affordable. Something that I think was a big piece of news late last year was when Analog announced their Analog Pocket, which is a more hardware-based emulation using an FPGA, and that's usually a lot more expensive and appeals to kind of the really hardcore retro enthusiasts. I think this might be a really interesting answer for people that like the idea of using a Game Boy game on a modern TV, but don't necessarily want to break the bank doing it. Funny enough, this was an April Fool's joke that Hyperkin did 2-3 years ago. I think it was in 2017. The point is it was a joke they made, and enough people were interested that, well, here we are now. Again, like with the concept UFO, this is kind of an early stages thing. They haven't had any specifics yet for a pricing or release window just yet, as far as I've seen, but I'm gonna be really interested to see if it comes out later this year, especially if it's around the same time as the Analog Pocket, because I really wanna see how those two compare. That's it, that's the video. And if you don't care about any of this and you just want more actual Switch Pro news, there actually is one that might be coming out really soon. I did a video on it just the other day. Go check it out. John from TLD Today, everybody. Formerly, now just John.
Yeah.